Pi decentralization powers human on-chain, why America saved the yen, and the digital dollar endgame. Hello, I'm HomoArrosor. Up until now, I have been continuously tracking events in previous explainers that seemed completely disconnected. We covered topics like no one looked at social chain, Pi decentralization has begun, why Protocol 27 is the final one, and the beginning of ISO 24165, MiCA, and registered wallets. The content was vast, and because unfamiliar terms like public keys, validators, KYC silos, registered wallets, and AI agents appeared so frequently, it probably wasn't easy for you to grasp the entire picture at once. But you know, the core I have been researching is actually surprisingly simple. The United States is deploying a digital dollar backed by U.S. treasuries directly to billions of people worldwide. To do that, just making a dollar stablecoin is absolutely not enough. They must verify actual humans around the world, provide each person with a non-custodial wallet that they own directly, and allow AI and robots to use that money strictly within the scope delegated by the human. And above all, this massive global common ledger must be a decentralized network that no specific country or company can arbitrarily stop or control. So social chain, Pi Verify, Protocols 25 and 26, Protocol 27, registered wallets, and Pi Node, none of these were different stories. All of this was the required process for bringing billions of verified people on-chain with non-custodial wallets and ultimately completing a single global monetary system where digital dollars, real-world assets, humans, and AI operate together seamlessly. And today, with the core team's repeated emphasis that Protocol 27 is the final planned upgrade, alongside the powerful reemergence of Pi Node decentralization, all the scattered pieces have finally connected into one definitive picture. Let's break it down. What we are witnessing right now is the grand unification of macroeconomics and technology. These aren't two separate worlds anymore. They are completely intertwined. On one side of the equation, we have the immense macroeconomic catalyst. The U.S. Treasury is actively intervening in global markets to defend the architecture of the dollar empire. That is the macro trigger. But on the exact other side, we have the technological solution being deployed. Pi Protocol 27 and the aggressive push for node decentralization are building the exact human operating system required to distribute that new digital dollar. Because think about it, a globally distributed digital dollar requires actual human verification. You absolutely need non-custodial wallets, you need AI delegation to handle the speed of modern finance, and critically, you need a neutral, decentralized ledger. You simply cannot distribute a sovereign-backed currency to billions of people globally through a closed corporate server. It demands a neutral, globally distributed human infrastructure. We are watching global finance and decentralized technology merge into one unified system. To truly understand the gravity of this, we have to look at the undeniable facts of our current timeline. We are sitting right here in August 2026, and this is a synchronized global shift. It is absolutely not a coincidence. Let's look at the dates. On July 30th, Japan initiated a massive $53 to $59 billion market intervention to save the yen from a total collapse. It was a desperate move. And then the very next day, July 31st, the U.S. Treasury stepped directly into the market. A rate check was conducted by the New York Federal Reserve, and a definitive memo to buy $5 to $10 billion worth of Japanese yen was exposed. The U.S. actively intervened. Now, simultaneously, look at the technology timeline. The strict deadline for the Pi mainnet upgrade to Protocol v26 is set for August 11th. Every single mainnet node operator is forced to complete this upgrade by this exact date, or they are cut off from the network. The timeline is absolute. The macroeconomic intervention by the United States and the technological protocol upgrades of this decentralized network are moving in precise, undeniable lockstep. Now, you might be asking, why does the U.S. even care about the yen? This brings us to the conditional policy burden. The United States does not just run around saving every failing currency in the world. They selectively bear the cost of defending the absolute foundation of their global monetary system. The U.S. intervenes to protect core allies because the collapse of a core, protected currency like the yen directly threatens the U.S. Treasury market itself. By absorbing this national credit risk from Japan, the U.S. is actually protecting the demand for its own sovereign debt. This is quite literally the cost of empire. The entire global dollar system relies on a very strict hierarchy, and the U.S. actively manages this hierarchy by transferring sovereign credit risk onto its own balance sheet only when it is absolutely necessary for survival. Let's walk through the step-by-step reality of this yen crisis, because the mechanics here are crucial. Step 1 is the looming threat of a complete yen collapse. The currency was in freefall. Step 2 is the direct consequence of that threat. To defend their currency, Japanese institutions are forced into a mass liquidation of U.S. treasuries. Japan is one of the largest holders of U.S. debt in the world. When they start selling, they flood the entire market with supply. And that leads directly to step 3, which is the alarm bell. Because of that massive sell-off, the U.S. 30-year Treasury risk premium spiked violently. It hit exactly 5.274%, which is the absolute highest level since July 2007. The global market recognized immediately that the staggering cost of defending the yen was falling squarely on the U.S. Treasury market, which forced step 4, immediate, decisive U.S. intervention to protect their dollar ally. The U.S. Treasury had to step in and buy yen simply to stop Japan from selling more U.S. Treasuries. They protected the yen, yes, but only to protect themselves. And this whole event brilliantly illustrates the currency hierarchy that dominates our world. The global financial system is divided into very strict tiers. At the very top, the apex, we have the ultimate global store of value, the US dollar and US Treasury-backed stablecoins. Right below that, in the middle tier, we have the protected core allies. We are talking about currencies like the yen, the euro, the pound, and the Swiss franc. These currencies actually receive U.S. swap lines, they get emergency liquidity, and as we just saw with Japan, they get direct market intervention. They live inside the protection net of the United States. But then, at the very bottom, we have the unprotected sovereign currencies. Emerging market currencies. These are left entirely outside the protection net. And crucially, they're forced into direct, brutal, everyday competition with digital dollars. The US does not spend a single cent to save them. Instead, it allows the digital dollar to naturally absorb those domestic economies. This lack of protection creates what is known as the digital dollarization feedback loop. And once this loop starts, it is a one-way street directly to U.S. Treasury backing. It always starts with a weak local currency in an unprotected emerging market. Regular citizens who are just trying to protect their life savings from hyperinflation and instability start buying digital dollars on their phones. But as they move their wealth into digital dollars, local banks lose their physical deposits. Without those deposits, the local banking system begins to weaken and crumble, which causes the local currency to weaken even further. This accelerated weakness panics the public, driving even more citizens to buy even more digital dollars. The cycle reinforces itself endlessly, draining the local system until that domestic economy is operating entirely on U.S. Treasury-backed stablecoins. So here is the real realization. Issuing those digital tokens, creating a dollar stablecoin, is actually the easiest part of this entire process. The ultimate bottleneck, the real challenge, is distribution. Think about it. How do you distribute these digital dollars to billions of unbanked citizens legally across the globe? You have to overcome incredibly fragmented, highly siloed global KYC and AML regulations. You have to actively prevent massive Sybil attacks and armies of fake accounts. You have to ensure true non-custodial ownership so that the users actually control their funds, not a bank. And you have to pull all of this off while maintaining absolute political neutrality. If it looks like a U.S. corporate dictatorship imposing its will on sovereign nations, it will be banned instantly. Overcoming that is the true geopolitical hurdle. To solve this massive bottleneck, a highly specific technological architecture is absolutely required to bring billions of people on-chain. Like I said, creating a stablecoin is completely useless without a comprehensive human operating system ready to receive it. The exact requirements are strictly defined. First, you need global human verification to ensure one real human equals exactly one account. Second, you must have non-custodial wallets to guarantee individual ownership and total sovereignty over assets. Third, AI authority delegation is required to allow humans to operate efficiently in an automated, high-speed digital economy without being left behind. And fourth, consensus decentralization is mandatory to ensure the entire ledger is politically neutral and universally accepted by every nation. This brings us directly to the Pi network, which serves as this exact required human operating system. Just look at the sheer unmatched scale of Pi Verify. We are looking at a human verification layer consisting of over 18 million verified humans, spanning more than 200 countries and regions globally. This is the ultimate global human verification layer. It acts as a universal identity layer, allowing institutions to finally onboard users without endlessly replicating KYC silos, and it is fully compliant with strict data regulations like GDPR. It solves the fragmented KYC bottleneck perfectly and at a scale no one else has achieved. And this isn't just a theoretical concept. Look at the verification engine in actual action. This system has already executed over 526 million verification tasks. It is powered by an incredible hybrid of decentralized AI, working alongside human KYC validators. Over 1 million human validators have actively contributed to this massive effort, and every ounce of their labor is entirely settled on-chain. This is a fully functioning, on-chain settled human labor force operating on a global scale today. It proves definitively that the foundation for bringing billions of humans on-chain is already built and is actively processing data as we speak. Now, to effectively utilize this massive human layer, the network requires a definitive sequence of technological leaps. We refer to this as the protocol evolution. Step 1 was Protocol 25, which introduced zero-knowledge proofs into the ecosystem. Step 2 is Protocol 26, which handles complex financial execution and real-world assets. And Step 3 is Protocol 27, which activates AI delegation. This specific sequence is not random. It is the mandatory step-by-step path required to safely and legally onboard real-world assets into non-custodial wallets held by verified humans. So let's look at what these protocols actually do in practice. Protocol 25 uses zero-knowledge proofs to prove eligibility without ever exposing a person's identity. It allows a user to cryptographically prove to the network that they have passed KYC or that they meet certain regulatory criteria without exposing their raw, sensitive personal data to the public ledger or to a third-party application. Protocol 26, which has that strict August 11th upgrade deadline we talked about, provides the robust execution environment. It handles complex financial computation, strict contract safety, and precise state management. It provides the absolute necessary environment to safely manage heavily regulated real-world assets within these newly registered wallets. And then we reach the culmination, Protocol 27. This is the final planned foundational upgrade for the network, and it is arguably the most critical for the future economy. It solves the massive human value attribution problem. In the AI era we are entering, Protocol 27 acts as the AI delegation and value attribution layer. The verified human is always the ultimate owner of the wallet. The human delegates specific authority to AI agents, setting strict, unchangeable limits on spending, asset access, and time duration. The AI executes lightning-fast transactions within those exact limits. But crucially, the profits, the generated data, and the produced value flow directly back to the wallet owner. The human captures the profit generated by the machine. So let's connect the macroeconomic picture directly to this micro-technological level using the asset transit rail. The DTCC supplies the massive liquidity, the tokenized U.S. treasuries, equities, and real-world assets. They are the ultimate source of value. The Stellar Public Blockchain provides the high-speed data chamber. It is the public infrastructure for tokenization and fast asset transit across the globe. And Pi Network acts as the vast, legally compliant receptor network. Pi doesn't need to issue the stablecoin or mint the real-world asset itself. It operates as the compliant human receptor network for all of those assets moving rapidly across the Stellar rail, utilizing Pi Verify, smart accounts, and non-custodial wallets to actually place that value into the hands of billions of humans. But here is the critical geopolitical catch. For sovereign nations around the world to actually accept this system, the architecture is paramount. A flawed central server is immediately viewed as a U.S. corporate dictatorship. It is easily censored, it is subject to unilateral shutdown by a single CEO or government order, and it is legally viewed simply as a foreign payment app. Sovereign nations reject that entirely. The required architecture must be a global, neutral protocol. It requires an uncensorable consensus, a fully decentralized ledger that is accepted globally as a neutral piece of public infrastructure. The recent intense push for Pi node decentralization is absolutely not just a tech update for faster speeds. It is the final, non-negotiable geopolitical requirement to ensure this global, neutral ledger is not rejected by the rest of the world as merely a corporate tool. Achieving this requires a very delicate dual structure, the regulated interface existing alongside the neutral ledger. On one side, you have Social Chain. This is the centralized, legally accountable entity. It strictly enforces Pi Verify, handles KYC and AML compliance, manages corporate contracts, controls API access, and carries the heavy burden of data protection liability. Its very nature is accountable, legal, and highly regulated. On the exact opposite side, you have the Pi mainnet. This is the decentralized, neutral ledger. It functions entirely through independent nodes and supernodes using SCP consensus, and it solely manages the ledger state and the non-custodial wallets. Its nature is entirely uncensorable, trustless, and decentralized. And the distinction between these two sides is absolutely vital to the whole operation. You do not decentralize legal liability. You can't put legal liability on a blockchain. Social Chain retains all the legal liability and faces the regulators. What you decentralize is the ledger and the consensus. By heavily decentralizing the Pi nodes globally, you create an unstoppable monetary protocol. The rules are enforced globally, and the consensus is distributed among thousands of independent operators, but the regulatory compliance interface remains completely accountable. This dual structure is the only possible way to build a legally compliant financial system that sovereign nations cannot simply shut down. Now, we bring every single thread together into the grand unification architecture. Look at how perfectly it aligns. U.S. Treasuries serve as the bedrock collateral. The digital dollar serves as the transacting value. DTCC and Stellar provide the high-speed institutional asset rail. Pi-Verify provides the massive, legally compliant human verification layer. Protocol 27 operates the AI and human wallet delegation for the future economy. And Pi mainnet nodes provide the neutral, globally distributed ledger to record every single transaction independently. This isn't a bunch of random projects. It is a single, completely coherent architecture designed specifically to onboard billions of people into the digital dollar endgame. The endgame is no longer theoretical, my friends. It is executing right now, right in front of us. With the Protocol 26 upgrade deadline hitting right now and node consensus actively moving into a heavily decentralized position across the globe, this unified system is fully activating. The macroeconomic interventions by the US have secured the dollar's dominance, and the technological protocols have built the exact distribution network required to deploy it. The final core pieces are snapping into position as we speak. So I leave you with this. What happens to the landscape of global finance the exact moment this open network fully engages?